Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Episode 380. What does that mean? That means I've recorded 379 episodes before I plugged in my microphone today. But it also means that today is another edition of Fly Fishing Accusations, my opportunity to interact with your questions, comments, and accusations. Any feedback that you have to something I've said, something I've recorded myself in front of a camera, or something that I've written. And if you are not one of the pieces of feedback that goes on to this podcast episode, I do my best to interact with you individually. So let me know if there's something you want to talk about or bring to my attention. Matthew at castingacross.com. All right, so the first bit of feedback I wanted to bring up today is from an article that I published in 2019. So I'm thankful that my little podcast and website tools let me know when things happen, because I certainly wouldn't be surfing back through here, but I'm happy that people go and find things. But this was an article about a fly rod that was from like 99, 2000 that I love. And people like to interact, and they ask questions about it and give their opinions on the lines they like using. And so there was a discussion that's been going back for like 5 years now of people saying what line they like using for this particular rod. So they go back and forth, and I recommended a Rio line that had come out around that time, and some other people were saying like they really enjoyed the Cortland lines, and some other lines got thrown in there. And the most recent comment was from a gent named John, and John says this: I did try the Rio and found it heavy. It wasn't a bad line, but I switched back to Cortland 444. I'm still on Cortland after 20 years. This brings up so many interesting things. And so, John, thank you for commenting, and I'm glad I saw it. So, first thing, use the line that makes you happy. So, John, use that 444 Peach and embrace it. It's a great line. It comes in at a reasonable price. It's $69 now, I think, which I think when I started fly fishing, Cortland 444 was not $69. It was a little bit less expensive than that, but everything changes, and so we got to be okay with that. But it's a great fly line, and any line that you cast well is the line that you should be fishing. I am convinced of that. But then he does say that the Rio line was a little bit heavier for him. So now I want to acknowledge that, say he's fishing a 5-weight. It is slightly heavier. There are about a quarter more grains within that weight designation. So like 5 or 6 grains, which accounts to really like a gram for the weight of that line between the Cortland 444 and the comparable Rio kind of core avid trout line. Now, that is not necessarily something that most of us would be able to perceive, but there is a difference. I mean, there's no denying that there's a difference there. I think perhaps what you may be noticing in the difference between those two lines, if indeed we're talking about just the core 444 from Cortland and the core avid trout line from Rio, is the head length. The head length on the 444 is about 32 feet, and the head length on the avid trout, again in the 5-weight, is 47 feet. We're talking about 15 feet of difference. What does this mean? This means that you have a longer belly on the Rio line, which is designed a little bit more for delicate presentations at longer distances. Practically, this means that aspect of this weight-forward line, if you're using the Cortland, you only need about 35 feet out of the tip of your fly line to be able to get that entire belly of that taper up into the air and get the benefit of that extra weight helping flex your rod and generate line speed. If you had that same amount of length of fly line out of your tip, and if you were using the Rio line, that's that same price point, you would still have about 10 feet of that belly of that taper in your guides and down into your reel. So you would not feel or get the benefit of all of that taper being out of your rod tip. Now, depending on where you're fishing, what flies you're using, what kind of presentations you're wanting to make, one could be better than another. Of course, if a skilled angler would be able to use both of them. I think probably all of us with a little bit of work could use both of them well. But just depending on how you fish, how you cast, wherever you go, then you're going to have to figure out what's going to be better for you. So if one feels better, then fish that fly line. If it's twice as much, if it's half as much, then fish that fly line and enjoy it. Enjoy the line of your youth. So, yes, I would agree, John. There are some objective differences between these two fly lines. I think heaviness is there, but I think the length of the head is probably the thing that you're feeling more significantly. Now, this just, again, fish the line you like, but go out and try new lines. I would say that better fly lines are often better, but each one of us is different. You could get a fly rod and you could put it in laboratory settings and apply all the optimum variables to the casting mechanism. And there's probably a fly line that would excel over all the others, just from like an empirical standpoint. But for you and me, when we're out fishing, we're not going to have those kinds of conditions. So what I would say is go to a fly shop that has a couple different lines on some of their demo spools and ask them to cast 3 or 4 different 4 weights or 5 weights with your rod. And then if you still have questions, then look at those backs of those boxes. Go to the websites. They have the grain weights. They have the taper charts. And you're able to say, okay, I like this aspect of this one. It felt great at this distance. If this one felt great at this distance. And try to figure out. And just talk to a fly shop worker. And they can give you some really, really helpful information. I mean, it's not super duper scientific. But, if you've been used to just casting whatever came pre-spooled on that reel, and now you're trying to step your game up, it can be a bit of a learning curve, but it certainly isn't rocket science. Although some of the fly line manufacturing companies will like to make it sound like it is. But just get out there and cast, fish with what makes you happy, and enjoy casting good fly lines. It's so nice to have a good fly line. Hey, I usually do 3 things here, but I'm going to add 2 more in. So this is actually 5 pieces of feedback. I ran into Tom at the fly fishing show in Massachusetts. He reads Casting Across, and he has pointed out typos more than once. And he was apologetic, and that's the last thing I want. If you see something that's not working on the website or something goofy I did, a lot of times I go and edit things, and I miss a verb tense, or autocorrect doesn't see that the word is the wrong word. It's spelled right, but it's not the right word. Let me know. My wife doesn't read everything I write, so I rely on folks like you. So Tom, thank you for doing that and for seeing me and grabbing me, and do not apologize for pointing out my mistakes. All right. Next piece of feedback is from Bob. So Bob is responding to an article I wrote about my preferred action for small stream fly fishing, and it's my preferred action. Let me nuance that a little bit. I think it's the most effective and efficient action. All right, and I think it's that medium fast action, crisp tip, lightweight fly rod that helps you control your back cast. I've talked about that so much. So I wrote an article about that relatively recently, kind of talked about that a little bit more. Actually, I have an article coming out in print that talks about this concept coming up soon. But Bob writes in response to that, interesting. I love fishing small streams. I have a 6-foot, 5-weight bamboo rod that I'm used to for probably 40 or 50 years. It's just a delight to fish. But thank you for opening my eyes to some new and different possibilities. Good stuff. So my response, and I'll read it as was definitely just possibilities. There's no reason to stop fishing the rod you love. And I stand by that. There's no reason to stop doing what you're doing because somebody, me in particular, writes about a different way to do it. I don't think that's what Bob was saying. I don't think he was giving his half-century-old bamboo fly rod away just because I wrote an article, but I think he was interested in the possibility of doing something different. But again, kind of like with the fly line, use what you enjoy. Use what you like using. Use what you're comfortable using. It might not be the best, but if you enjoy it, that means something. I know a lot of folks that fish their grandpa's fly rod because it's sentimental. It's slow and it's cheap and it's maybe even a little bit janky or busted, but they enjoy using it. That's fantastic. That has more value in many ways than a brand new, $1,200 fly rod. And at the end of the day, we don't fly fish to be pragmatic or to be utilitarian. If we want to be utilitarian in catching fish, we'd use spinning rods and worms, right? Now, of course, there's this kind of happy medium of having that kind of extreme perspective and just using whatever. But yeah, use what you enjoy using. And if you say, I'm intrigued by this possibility, I want to keep using my 40 or 50-year-old bamboo rod or whatever rod it is, but I do like the idea of being able to have a little bit more line control. Then go out and find a fly line that's a little bit lighter. It's sometimes as easy as dropping down a line weight designation. So he said that it's a 5-weight line. All right, throw a 4-weight line on there. Or if you want a really nice line, go and find one of these lines, kind of like a half step, and get that 4-weight, but it has a heavier grain weight, and see what that does. Sometimes that small change will produce something significant in the action of that fly rod. And it'll just make that bamboo rod sing. It'll make that fiberglass rod sing, or even that slower graphite rod. It'll do some cool things to it. So I would say, Bob, keep fishing that fly rod and keep having a lot of fun with it. Okay, the fourth thing? No, it's the fourth thing, is another like administrative detail that I wanted to comment on. Gary commented on an older podcast episode. So this is episode 181, almost 200 episodes ago. And he said, I'm trying to listen right now to podcast 181, but every time I get here, it has other podcasts. I'm new to podcasts, so any help is appreciated. Well, Gary, this is not your fault. It is a fault of the way that older podcasts were listed on the website. For the last, year and a half, maybe 2 years, each individual episode has been embedded on the article on Casting Across. Prior to that, both with the same platform I'm using now, Megaphone, and the previous one, Libsyn, it looked like almost like a player. And no matter when I publish it, it just constantly refreshed with the newest episode. So my suggestion is probably for me to go back and change 200 podcasts. But short of that, if you see an episode you like, go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, copy it from my websites, the name of it, and then paste it in there. So putting in fly fishing for bigger panfish, Casting Across, even in Google, and it'll pop up in a place where you can play it. So thank you, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience. All right, the last piece of feedback that I wanted to share was actually something that was asked in both Marlborough, Mass. And in Edison, New Jersey, in one of my presentations called Fly Fishing for Backcountry Trout. And it was about footwear. Now, I've talked about footwear before, but this was specific to, should we buy those wading shoes that are sold for like wet wading and hiking? And honestly, I've never owned a pair. I've played with them. I've tried them on. I've walked in them. And I think that they are a great option if you are looking for a very singularly focused piece of gear. Personally, I think you'd be better off with a pair of lightweight wading boots that you could also use with your waders. I think if you're looking for foot support and ankle protection, that's going to give you more than a lot of those wading shoes. I also like the fact that even though some of those wading shoes have like a neoprene cuff around your ankle, that you can really tighten that up and use different sorts of wading socks and neoprene booties and things like that within a wading shoe. And then if you want to go the other direction, like I use the kayaking shoes from Astral. They're happy in water. They kick water out. They're antimicrobial. They don't allow debris in. They're designed for that purpose. I can wear them with a sock and I can wear them barefoot. Their grip is spectacular, and they're designed for, moving overland and on the water. So I like the flexibility of having a lightweight wading boot that I can use for more intense applications, and then a shoe that I can use if I really want to move quickly. So I have very little perceived need for that wading shoe. But I can see how for some people it would be a good option. I would say go try them on. My suggestion to the folks that were asking that at the fly fishing shows was, this just depends on your needs for foot support, for ankle support, your needs for traction. I would say that those are the things that I look for more than weight. A couple ounces of difference. If ankle support means something, wear that wading boot. Don't try to get away with less, okay? If you need good ankle support, if you need good traction, then you'll probably need to move over to one of those wading boots that maybe gives you something with studs. I've never found a really lightweight shoe that has studs on it. So I would say, again, err on that side. But if, like me, you're going really deep into the backcountry sometimes, I am going to go with a very, very ultralight shoe that is going to shed water quickly. So if I throw it back on my backpack or if I end up walking back in it, it's not going to be waterlogged. So you can go in all three directions. But honestly, I just don't have a lot of experience with those shoes. I'm sure if I had a pair, I would use them, but I don't really feel that need to use that particular shoe. If not moving fast is something that you see yourself like, okay, I want to move quickly, but I'm never gonna move super fast, and I really don't care about having something that's a little bit wet, then maybe a wading shoe would be good for you. Or if you just do a lot of wet wading at your Bass Creek or your Panfish Creek in your neighborhood, then that might be the best option for you if you want something devoted to that. But I just don't have a lot of experience with them. I've seen them, played with them, but I have not fished with them, at least for maybe 15 years. This week on Casting Across, as always, 2 articles. First article was called Rusty Flybox Presidential. This was President's Day, and I put out 3 pieces of content that all had to do with presidents of the United States, where they fish, and with their office. So definitely check those out, including the Presidential Fishness Test. So if you grew up in a time like I did, where you had to do the mile and pull-ups and the V sit and reach, which was always the biggest challenge for me, and sit-ups and the shuttle run, then you will appreciate the Presidential Fishness Test. That article you'll see on Rusty Flybox Presidential, and 2 other ones too. Wednesday's article is called Putting Trout on the Map. It's another video. This time it is Bob Mallard's book called 25 Best Towns Fly Fishing for Trout, again, by Bob Mallard. I've reviewed other books in this series before. This is a fun book because it celebrates, and what a blast it must have been for Bob to research this book, these 25 towns where it's not just one river, it's not just one fishery, and it's not just the river, but there's things in the town that cater to anglers. These towns have fly shops. These towns have other resources for fly fishing. It could be something historical. It could be something that is just, again, directly catering to anglers. So it's a lot of fun to just flip through. It's a great way to plan a trip. He also highlights things that are beneficial to those who might not be angling. So it's just a fun little read, worth having on your shelf of guidebooks. A little bit different than your typical guidebook, but it just gives you a lot of options when you go fishing. So check out that video on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to the Casting Across YouTube channel while you're at it. This week's recommendation on the podcast is actually a product from the good people at Cortland. It is the 444 Silk, SYLK. So Silk is a modern fly line. All those bells and whistles, the durability, the materials, the slickness, but it is a very supple fly line. And it's also a very thin fly line because this has been designed to imitate the fly lines of old, the actual Silk fly lines. And I love fishing this line on one of my bamboo rods and one of my fiberglass rods. I have the 4-weight and a 5-weight, and they both, I have a 4-weight and a 6-weight, and they both are a lot of fun to cast. Again, am I going to be able to bomb this thing out in the same distances that I am with my, kind of more contemporarily designed fly lines with the modern tapers? Absolutely not. But I'm also not using the rods that I would want to do that with in the first place. But if you have a bamboo rod, whether it's a new bamboo rod or an old bamboo rod, if you have a fiberglass rod that's a little bit more progressive in its taper, a little slower in its taper, or I would say if you even have a medium or medium slow graphite rod, then give this a shot. Again, go to a shop that carries Cortland products and give it a cast. I really enjoy fishing it. It is not it's not a novelty. It's not quirky. It's nothing like that. It's a lot of fun. I've only fished in the weight for it. I can't comment on the double taper. I'm not a fan of double taper fly lines, so I'm not the best person to talk to on that. But definitely give that fly line a chance. I will put a link for where you can find it on this podcast's show notes over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcasts in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Then head over to castingacross.com where there's 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.